Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session on public finance management and reporting. And I hope you are all keeping safe, observing social distancing, making proper use of the mask. You'll forgive me, I'm not putting on one because I'm working from home, and making proper use of sanitizers. But all in all, we don't need to worry. For those of you who know Joel Austin, he once said that worry is a big thief. So once we get worried, then there is a lot we are taking away from ourselves. However, it gives me the pleasure to moderate today's session, where we have two seasoned accountants that have lived their life within public finance management, and they will be sharing with us their knowledge. When COVID-19 outbreak was announced on 31st of December 2019, we all did not know what to expect. Some of us enjoyed our end of year. We did party. Some people did mock the flu that was killing the Chinese until it landed in Italy and then finally into Uganda. So COVID-19 is presenting with us with unprecedented challenges. From its effect in our daily lives. Gone are the days when it's long when we last visited our hotspots, our bars, or social activities. It has hit on world economies, and even the way we report as accountants has also not been saved. Now that we've had a taste of what COVID has for us, it's now the time to look at things differently. And everyone now, everyone calls it the new normal. We are wearing beards, we are working from home. Yesterday I was watching CNN and there was this movie actor who said COVID-19 has helped her rediscover the value of his family. So all of us, it's really a mixed bag, and all of us have really tested it in a different way. So the new normal is we are having many people attend webinars, and I think John can confirm that. The last 2 weeks, I think we've had 3 webinars organized by the Institute. Just imagine taking off accountants for three times in 2 weeks to attend these sessions. So the new normal is real, and we are presented with a challenge that we certainly have got to live with and make sure that we take advantage of every opportunity that it gives us. Earlier this year, the government of Uganda did respond to the COVID-19 situation. We had a share of our lockdown. The next thing is now we need to look at how do we recover and how do we thrive. Such a situation has occurred before, and I think most of you know that around 1918 to 1920, there was a Spanish flu that also presented us with similar challenges as we have today. But people did recover, organizations stayed, the organizations that have lived more than 100 years that did stay. So this is the right time for us to begin thinking about recovery, thinking about thriving. Without taking a lot of your time, I would like to introduce to you our speakers today, who I've already mentioned that are seasoned accountants. And our speakers today is CPA Ambrose Promise, who is the Commissioner of Public Sector Accounts in the Accountant General's Office. And also we have CPA Gad Twesije, who's also the Commissioner of Inspections at Ministry of Local Government. A brief about CPA Ambrose. As I mentioned, he's a Commissioner of Public Sector Accounts at Accountant General's Office with 20 years of experience, over 20 years of experience. He's been a member, he's actually a member of SCCA and also a fellow. He's been a member of the Institute for 15 years. He's served as a member of the implementation teams for commitment control system in 2000, and also IFMS in 2003. He's a trained trainer in government on public financial management systems. He's a committee member of the committee that formulated the Public Finance and Accountability Act of 2003. He's a committee member of the team that developed the Public Finance Management Act of 2015. Away from the accounting world, he's an avid golfer, although he has not taken a challenge to the golf course with me. He loves tree planting, and what I know about him is a devout Christian, and that one I can testify. On the other hand, CPA Tracy Gad is a seasoned accountant. He's a CPA, he has got an MBA, he has got various postgraduate qualifications. If I start mentioning them, then we will have a webinar for that session alone. But his working life, he's served as a senior internal auditor in Bushenyi, has been a chief finance officer of Mitoma. He also served as the chief finance officer of Mbarara district, and now he's a commissioner inspections, Minister of Local Government. He's also serving as a board member on Uganda Road Fund. I do, by the powers entrusted upon me, hereby invite CPA Ambrose to present to us this morning. Over to you, CPA Ambrose.
Thank you, Norbert, for your kind introduction. I hope I'm audible enough. Good morning, colleagues. I request that you allow me to present without a mask since I'm in office alone, and also seated. Though of course nobody will say that I'm not very tall. So today we are looking at the impact of COVID-19 on PFM and reporting. I will go through it in about 4 major parts: introduction and context, the PFM reporting cycle, the PFM cycle and reporting, then the impact on the key PFM areas that have been affected by COVID-19. This will be both in terms of the areas affected and the challenges, as well as, of course, later on we'll look at the major lessons and the way forward. By way of introduction, I think most of us are now well versed that the first case of corona was in Africa was in Egypt on 14th Feb. That was the first time that was reported. And later on, World Health Organization in March declared it a pandemic. This, of course, had started in December, November, October as a joke in China, which ended up here, but is no longer that way. Of course, countries have been pushed to the limit, and we have had to do drastic measures to contain the impact of this epidemic. These figures are from the World Health Organization. Of course, now the figure is about 9.6 or 9.7 million globally, with over 470,000 deaths and 216 countries affected. And of course, it is still increasing. Africa alone accounts for 21% of the global figure, with 47 countries affected in Africa. East Africa, we are still, I think the virus is still kind to us. We only have about 9,000 cases. And by good luck, which I think is really good because Uganda is a Christian country on the whole, we have only 805 cases with 0 deaths. That we should thank God, I think. Now, of course, of late, you have heard the president is easing down on the lockdown measures despite the increasing number of coronavirus cases. But we are hopeful that with time we shall be able to overcome it. Now, It is no doubt that this has had an adverse effect on our PFM systems. Economies are going to have a challenge, companies have collapsed, and health systems have been stretched to the limit. Now, before we go deeper into the areas that have been affected, we need to understand the elements of the PFM cycle. We have about 5 key elements. The fiscal framework, which looks at the revenues and expenditures, the projections we are going to use as government for planning for our future. The medium-term expenditure framework, which tells us for the next 5 years, this is the amount of money we expect to get, as well as the resources which will generate that money. In addition, we do a projection of the likely allocation areas or expenditure areas where the funding will be used to implement activities for the service of the population. The next key area is the budget preparation. Once we have known where the resources will come from, how much is available, and the expenditure areas that it will be put to, then we do the budget preparation. Followed by, of course, execution, releasing funds to implement the activities by the various agencies, which in the government terms of by PFM we call them votes. But these are ministries, these are agencies, these are local governments, these are missions or embassies abroad, which implement government activities. The next key area is accounting and reporting. Of course, once you spend as a government, you have got to account. You have got to report to the population at the end of the day how the resources have been utilized. And then finally, there is audit and control, reporting to Parliament through Auditor General, and then you have the scrutiny of the outputs on whether you have actually delivered your mandate or not. So in all these areas, definitely our planning has been affected, which would require us to reassess our fiscal policy, reassess our sources of additional financing that may be required, as well as tracking the accountability and reporting on these funds that have been used for these emergency response measures that have been put in place. Of course, in addition, we also have to look at the way you are going to utilize the lean staff available in the circumstances. So we are going to go through the impact and the challenges in those 5 themes in terms of the fiscal framework, in terms of budget preparation, budget execution, accounting and reporting, as well as control and audit. So in terms of the fiscal framework, you have heard from the minister's budget speech, our projected GDP growth is going to decline to 3.1% from 6% as we had earlier put. The revenue shortfalls, that is no question. In summary, if we just took the month of May alone from our report on performance of the economy, you have a shortfall. We have collected 966 billion against the 1.7 trillion that was targeted only for May alone. That is on revenues and grants. Then, of course, in terms of the financial sector, we have had challenges with the clients failing to pay their loans. So we have had to plan for liquidity in the financial sector. And of course, as we shall see later on, we are looking at funding to provide Bank of Uganda. We are looking at funding to provide the Uganda Development Bank. And that actually also has been helped by BOE reducing the CBR rate from 9% to 7% by June 2020. Public debt, this is projected to increase, but the magnitude will be assessed after the completion of this financial when a thorough audit has been undertaken. Then, of course, obviously, there is a decrease in the household expenditure, investments, exports, and imports due to the restrictions that have been put in place to contain the pandemic. Now, how did it affect budget preparation? That was on fiscal framework. We had the lockdown was declared in March when we had already started the completion or the final completion stages of the budget process. Now, of course, the macroeconomic variables were affected. In terms of unemployment, people are going to lose jobs and have already lost some of them. We are looking at inflation. If you remember at the time that we started the hand sanitizers, the prices first skyrocketed before they were brought back to normal. So those variables obviously affected the way we are going to look at our revenues for the budget of 2020-21. And of course, in the process of that lockdown and restrictions on movement, we were unable to adequately scrutinize the draft budgets of ministries and the agencies' budgets, because it involved the physical meetings which were put to restriction and some never took place. So you would have to use the submissions from the respective votes, assuming that what they had put in the submissions of their estimates is a real estimate. And of course, eventually Parliament approved the final budget, which was presented on 11th June. Then we have had, of course, to prioritize the activities within the budget. And I think you saw the Secretary of the Treasury some time back in the papers explaining how we shall have some budget cuts next financial year to accommodate the effects of this pandemic. This was because we had already started the budget process when it came in and it was almost in completion, that we have had to think twice and possibly have it reviewed next financial year. Economic stimulus package, this I will elaborate more on it later. Now, when it comes to budget execution, of course, the key emergency measures that we had to undertake around that time was contingency. The contingency approach, we had to use the funding which was available to finance Ministry of Health. The next step was supplementary budgets. Then we had to open bank accounts for the public, which was donating to the government. And then we issued emergency response fund guidelines. That account is in Stanbic Bank, and of course the President put up the National Task Force, which is coordinating those donations under the Office of the Prime Minister. Expenditure reprioritization, that one we had to request some ministries to only reallocate and then consider essential services to do with security and of course food and meals, and then as well as the health sector. Those are the key areas that were being considered, and it ultimately resulted in suppression of some expenditures. Cutting down on training, travel abroad was already naturally cut down, and then of course workshops due to social distancing. Payments in as well followed that trend of looking at priority sectors for health, security, and of course salaries for the employees. And then the other challenge we faced was having people work from home. You would have to get them have tools for use. They would be having internet access, and many of our employees did not have that. So we had limited access, and officers handing over. If you have two officers at the office, you'd find one has handed over to another one and an assignment is not complete, but he has to go on rotation. So it was presenting so many challenges in terms of accessing those systems. If someone had to work from home on PBS or IFMS, you needed access, which was a challenge. And then, of course, we needed to also look at the sources of funding. Where would we generate extra revenue? Later on, we shall see a table which shows the resources so far we are trying to mobilize for funding the efforts of eliminating this virus. Of course, the key ones is usually borrowing. You have to look for grants and then donations, which Ugandans are now providing. So the funding at the glance that we have almost confirmed is a supplementary first immediately was issued of 284 billion, which was largely for Ministry of Health and other essential services. The votes to do with security office of the Prime Minister and other agencies supporting the efforts. We have to date received donations. This is at the end of May, 13 billion shillings. These are cash donations from Ugandans. We have also donations in cash which are coming in US dollars, $950,000, donations in kind which have been valued so far amount 13.6 billion. Now, OPM is supposed to coordinate and ensure that all the donations in kind to the local governments are also reported, and the National Task Force will give us this report at an appropriate time. But they are supposed to report to the OPM, the local governments, on a monthly basis. The guidelines were issued to that effect, and they are expected to submit those reports to the National Task Force through the Office of the Prime Minister. We're also looking for funding from the IMF, which I think all of you are aware of, $491.5 million as an economic stimulus. Part of it is going to BOU, Uganda Development Bank, and then budget support. World Bank is also in the advanced stages of providing $300 million economic stimulus, which these two have not yet been received. European Union has also promised 4 million euros to the health sector, while we issued out contingency funding of 25 billion to Ministry of Health. We continue with budget execution. Of course, this involved liquidity management. We had to control the amount of funding which was being paid out on a daily basis from the Treasury, to also watch out for debt delays in debt servicing, ensuring that we don't incur penalties with late payments. Supply chain disruptions, definitely it affected us and most of the people, because deliveries could not be made on time due to restrictions, and also payments for the suppliers as well. Activated business continuity plans which involved staff rotation, and we had a mobile standby team for critical system support. And coordination of activities for Ministry of Local Government, my colleague will speak a lot about it. We then resorted to online support for reports being submitted from the votes, as well as support. This has an element of internet and some votes. In addition to having no funding, especially the local government or local areas, the internet was unreliable. And then, of course, as a result, we were unable to undertake routine monitoring of activities, which affected everybody, even in the private sector. Flexibility and emergency procurements were again activated at that point, of course, with caution to procedures. Job insecurity, this is an issue that continues to affect, because you would hear some staff calling to find out whether they are actually still having jobs or not, because the departments, as guided by public service, we are operating at 30% capacity. So this extended to accounting and reporting, accuracy and reliability of the financial reports. We had planned to go out to train local governments that very week beginning 22nd March, but we were unable to do it. Government is currently implementing accrual accounting, and we are looking at rolling it out across. So we developed new formats of financial reporting, and this required us to go to local governments to train them, in addition to training the central votes. That week was the beginning, and we have not trained them up to now, but we expect them to report by 30th June using that format. So that is a challenge we are really going to have. And then we have had, even CPAU, I think, has not been able to conduct exams. Now we use a lot of our staff are studying CPA to improve their financial reporting skills, and definitely that has also been affected. Additional financial reporting requirements, because of the new donations which are coming in domestic, we have had to now to develop another report which will report only specifically on COVID-19 donation in our consolidated financial statements. When it comes to the reporting for expenditure, we had in May expenditure of 1.6 billion against the planned of 2.6 trillion. Rather, 1.6 trillion against 2.6 trillion, which was only 63% performance. Coming to the revenues, we have had 716 billion in the fiscal deficit. That was including grants for May alone, against the planned 889.7 billion. And these were partially offset by the lower than planned spending for most agencies. Delayed preparation and submission of reports, that's no question. Emerging accountability issues. You can be sure we shall have complications, especially with Auditor General, on some of the accountabilities being presented by officers to have been in office when they are actually not in office, or to have been in the field, and you require evidence in the face of these methods which have been utilized to contain the virus. So we shall have many questions to do with accountabilities against these expenditures. And then, of course, communication challenges between Treasury and votes because of the connectivity issues. When it comes to control and audit, the Auditor General will have to rethink the audit approach. Are we going to sit and do audits on webinar, which I think is not possible? Assuming the lockdown restrictions continue like this and physical distancing, how will the Auditor General conduct the audit? Complicated audit evidence, as I earlier said. If it comes to the medical services, how will you verify the expenditures incurred by the doctors and nurses in hospitals during that time of lockdown as an auditor? Then we also need to review the nature and types of audits to be conducted. Are they going to be forensic audits? Are you going to do financial audits? Are you going to do just sample audits? Delayed reports, of course, that is when people delay to report, then Auditor General will also be affected in the timelines for submission of his reports. Parliamentary oversight limitations, you have had, I think, issues to do with the PAC, where they have been calling people and now you have to force them to come only maybe 3 members or 4 members of staff from an agency, yet they may not provide adequate answers for the entire ministry as may be required in the audit report. Major lessons. Plan for contingency funding. This one I think I won't go in detail, but you'll have to read since the presentation will be shared. But just to know that disasters are unpredictable and others are even uncontrollable, because Corona came and all of us up to now are still looking for a virus or a solution apart from staying home. Flexibility in budgets. This one fortunately is allowed within our laws, which allows you to reallocate and then change the expenditure work plans to meet the emerging needs. Skills diversification. This is a key area where you will find that in some ministries or departments, there is only one person who can do an activity. If he or she is not there, then you cannot have a service delivered. And that means we need to increase the flexibility of our employees, capacity building initiatives to ensure that someone is not only trained in switching on a computer or switching it off, should be able to go inside and see what takes place, multitasking, staff rotation, and people should take leave, because when it came, some people had never been at home for more than a week. So we need to encourage our staff as well, a key lesson, to take leave when it is due, because it poses challenges. And that's why you heard at the beginning Norbert saying that people were able to understand their families. Maybe when they stay home during leave, they could be able to undertake such bonding. Automation of processes, that is no discussion. We have got to go technology way, adopt it, train, and get the use of the IT tools in our day-to-day duties as employees, employers, and also service providers. Then we need to develop policies for working from home, because we need to monitor how people, how do you know that someone is working from home? You are going to see on the computer, I'm sure some of the people on webinar who are going to get the CPDs, the CPD hours may have switched on webinar and just gone away. So how do you monitor that these 506 people I'm seeing online are actually attending to the presentation? So we need to develop policies that will enable us also monitor that when employees are saying they're working from home, they are actually working. Then employee and safety health policies at work. I think that's one thing most companies are not doing, but we need to think about it. The health and safety of our employees. Discipline in financial management, very critical. I am very sure all of us have been receiving calls for assistance for people you think should be having. People are crying for delivery of food and all of those. So we need to look at personal savings and investments for personal projects, that today if a disaster strikes and says no more work, we can be able to survive on our own, even at an individual level, because you would not call someone to come to work if he has spent the night without a meal. And a very good example here is it meaning that we have better attendance of online meetings? I can see we have 500 people in this CPD. I don't know how many times ICPA seminars have generated these kinds of attendees. So is online communication more effective, or is it cheaper, or is it more convenient for people to attend? So we adopt it as one way of use in our office for meetings? That is something to ponder about. Security of systems, no compromise, because as we go technology robust, we will need to have bigger framework in terms of controlling hackers and other bad elements in IT. Clear plan for policy dissemination information. I have been seeing in the paper, they are indicating that we have, I think we paid over 1 trillion shillings in terms of COVID, but actually the money which has been spent is not more than possibly 400 billion shillings. The money collected from donations is not yet utilized apart from donations in kind domestically. The money for World Bank and IMF has not yet arrived, and EU. So when people start talking of 1 trillion, so we need to have a way of how we can give regular updates to the population and the media on the information that we have regarding financial management. Otherwise, we risk having distortions. And then flexible systems. Our systems have really been flexible. IFMIS was handy when it came to time of being called upon in the face of the pandemic. So, on the way forward, funding response for this COVID-19, from the lessons we see, is supposed to be quick, clear, but with proper information disseminated to the relevant stakeholders. Otherwise, if you see what is happening on social media, they report cases where there are no cases. We need to really look at that in the future, for the future of our systems, both in our offices and as a government. Institutionalized COVID-19 policy in terms of work from home, in terms of policy, not only COVID-19, but an emergency work policy at workplaces, in terms of health of the employees, in terms of safety at work, and also to be flexible that you can work from home when need arises. Adoption of mobile device, that is the support, of course, to the work from home policy and online tools like this one we are using of Zoom. Controls, we need to be control freaks or alert. We need to reorient controls within our systems to ensure that they can handle, even when people are at home, you can monitor that they are working. And then, of course, putting in place business continuity plans so that if there is a gap, it cannot be affecting the output of an organization. We need standard operating procedures for handling digital documentation. This involved us now. We are receiving letters for opening bank accounts, letters, financial statements for 9 months. But is that legal? Yes, we refer to our electronic transactions statute and electronic other legal documentation, but we need to have them properly disseminated to all agencies, like we have the treasury accounting instructions, like we have the finance manuals, others for each and every organization that handles specifically digital platform. Extend reliable internet connectivity to local governments. I think this one, God will emphasize it further. We have regional treasury service centers, which the votes will be using to help our financial management systems. And then use of mobile apps and video-based training materials, which we have also developed to give to people so that in terms of such catastrophe, we can have them utilize those video-based materials to train themselves. And then mechanisms to provide remote support to votes, which is on standby. At the Treasury, we have the people working as late as midnight to ensure that staff get support wherever they are and across the world with our missions. Automation of manual processes, this I think is ongoing. Most companies know this. We need to automate our systems with, of course, care regarding the risk to our information because of the hacking. Budget alignment, cater for emerging needs. Now we need to think about issues to do with technology in our next budget. We have tried, but we need to see it grow big in terms of ICT and internet connectivity across the entire country. Financial reporting for timely assurance. This one we need, of course, to go back to our issue of capacity building to ensure that we have quality in what we receive, because we are moving into an area of extreme financial reporting with the interim reports required within certain framework. And then Office of the Auditor General will have to really guide us on emergency transactions. And finally, I think we all know the new norm. We are looking at issues of moving around with the social distance. Greetings have stopped. We have to wear masks, yet we have to work and we are still living. And we're working at half capacity. I think for us it's a third, 30%, but work must go on. So you find you're at home this week, next week you are working and working from home as part of the new norm. So we need to think about those areas that we can conduct businesses differently from the way we are doing. And technology continues to be a dominant force in what we do. Over the years, with the government systems we have put in place to do with PFM, I think they have been very handy, especially in the face of this pandemic. The EFMs, EFTs, TSA, PBS, they helped us to have key reports and budgeting concluded successfully in face of the pandemic. And then we need to have PFM systems which are flexible, comprehensive enough to handle everything in terms of the emerging needs, while ensuring, of course, value for money and minimizing any risks for fraud and corruption. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, CPA Ambrose, for the insights that you've shared with us. And colleagues, you, wherever you are, you can put together a hand for Ambrose and because of the presentation he has made to us. And I think there are some key things that government has put in place, as you can see, that we need also to borrow a reef and put within our businesses, just in case we haven't done so. But some key highlights that to look forward to, maybe during our question and answers and discussion session, things around having clear business continuity plans, things around discipline in public expenditure, things around resource mobilization and allocation, things around changes around accountability, rethinking the way we approach our audits, information control. I think these are some of the things that at times we've been taking for granted, but which in reality we need to be able to deal with. So at this juncture, I invite CPA Gad Twesige also to take us through his presentation. Over to you, CPA Gad.
Thank you, Norbert. Thank you, Ambrose, for that deliberate presentation. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, you are, Gad. Go ahead.
Thank you. Members and colleagues, Ambrose has been able to take us through major issues of the PFM. I will address myself on the local government perspective. Local governments, am I clear? I will address myself on local government perspective and briefly my structure of the presentation. I will briefly touch on the introduction because most of the issues have been done by Ambrose. What are some of the PFM systems in local government? I will touch on the impact on local government operations in relation to PFM. I will handle recommendations and finally make a conclusion. To address ourselves on the PFM, what it means briefly is a set of laws, rules, systems, processes used by a nation like Uganda to mobilize revenue, allocate public funds, undertake public spending, account for the funds, and the audit results, which Ambrose has been very efficient and clear to demonstrate. On the broad objective of PFM is to achieve a fiscal discipline, allocate resources to priority needs and efficient allocation for service delivery. Ambrose has been able to explain the service delivery. The key beneficiaries of all what Ambrose has been saying is local government. The citizens live in local government, and once this pandemic comes, it affects the local government most. On the mandate of local government mandate is to guide, inspect, monitor, mentor, advocate for all local governments, and support our overall vision of government to bring about socio-economic transformation of the country. COVID. Places standard operating procedures to control this scourge.
CPA guard, we are losing you. Is everything right on your side?
Hello? Are you getting me now?
Now we can hear you. Please go ahead.
These presentations makes a critical contribution on the impact of COVID, as has been mentioned by Ambrose. Some PFM systems used in local government that we have. Hmm? Hello.
God, go ahead, we can hear you.
Some of the PFM systems used in local government, most of them have been elaborated by Ambrose. But to address ourselves in local governments, we have a system of PBS, program-based budgeting, or program-based budgeting. This one basically is looking at planning and budgeting. We have the integrated financial management system, which is used in payments and financial reporting. The cash management has also been clearly elaborated by Ambrose. We also handle payment of staff, which is IPPS. We now have e-procurement. Now, the impact on the operation of these processes, basically when we can look at the budgeting and planning, we did not carry out the consultations as required. Ambrose had put it that we had started the budget process. In the event COVID came. So these consultations were not properly done. So it delayed the approvals of local government plans and budgets. In instances where local governments were supposed to make clear consultations, pass through the normal process, these approvals were not properly handled. And a few of the councils could sit and deliberate on issues that affects the local community. Several adjustments of the budgets after the COVID were emerged, and unplanned activities related to COVID were handled. We did not have we had limited support from the center. Ambrose had made it. While we are supposed to be supported by the Ministry of Finance on planning purposes, but this time it was not possible. We have remote areas and connectivity challenges. While the PBS is in Buweju, which is a far area, where it is in Kaperabyong, it was not possible to handle all these activities in time. On the payments and financial reporting, there was failure to absorb the budgets. Most of the budgets were released, but it was not possible for these activities that had earlier been planned to be effected. We had limited and technical hands-on support from the central government as required. Ambrose had clearly mentioned. Delayed statutory reports. Well, local governments were supposed to prepare a 9-month report at the end of March, but this was not possible, and delayed reports could not be made in time. Delayed payments because of the system failure, remote areas and connectivity challenges to access the internet. Also in local government had limited access to systems like integrated financial management systems. On revenue part, revenue management and revenue reduced. Shops were closed, markets were closed, tax park management was not possible, shops and trading centers could not be done, hotels could not operate, factories could not also operate. On procurement part, there was failure to execute all the planned procurements. What does that mean? Contracts were already signed and payments could not be done in time. So we anticipate that on this, we may get litigations which are also costly. The contractual challenges, especially with markets and tax tenderers, could not be possible. There are also on procurements adjustment to initial plans due to increased project costs. This could not be possible. And in local governments, they were also under absorption of funds to this aspect. Human resource equally was affected. The workload, as mentioned by Ambrose, standard operating procedures by Ministry of Public Service because of social distancing was restricted only 30%. This also increased the costs of transport because ministries could hire and also local governments could hire transport staff to working places. So this one increased the costs on transportation of staff. There were some planned recruitments. This Public Service Commission could not sit, and these recruitments were put on hold. Certainly this affects the capacity and also the implementation and service delivery. Planned capacity buildings, Ambrose had put it. All the planned capacity building, mentoring workshops were all stopped. Performance appraisals were also affected. Limited access to systems like IPPS, especially on hybrid. There are local governments who operate on hybrid, part automation, part manual. So this could not take place. Equally, oversight functions, audit, and local government public accounts committee could not. Politicians and oversight monitoring projects was affected. On-site inspection couldn't be done. Local government public accounts committee meetings and regional audit committees could not be held. Effective operation of the internal audit. This couldn't take place because of the impact of local government, because of the impact of COVID. There are other areas. Coordination of activities at the center couldn't be done. Communication between Ministry of Local Government and local governments also were affected. There are also laxity of local government to account. Because of COVID, officers could take an advantage and do not perform because they feel there is COVID. We are also providing recommendation out of this impact. We feel that we must do things differently. And this one, we need to work on the mindset change. We also need to empower other local government structures, e.g. local councils. You remember that during this COVID, there are task forces at the district headquarters, task forces at the local governments, and task forces at the lower local governments. These local government structures have done a very good job. And if these local government structures could be empowered, we feel they could do a very good job. We also need to look at effective delegation. Officers would not effectively delegate, indicating that they would want to do their activities alone. So in this COVID, should teach us on how to effectively delegate. We need to improve local government readiness for future events, disaster preparedness, and management to be incorporated in their plans. Local government should think of proper physical infrastructure planning to increase the revenue base. We also need to support SACCOs, and this would increase the resources to the household incomes. We need to operationalize the parish model, which is one of the major key models that is being handled by Ministry of Local Government to increase the capacity of parish chiefs, who will be able to identify the priorities. We also need to undertake agro-led. These are initiatives which are being implemented by local government. And once this is done, it means all the agricultural products of high value will be undertaken. Local governments also need to think of prioritizing their budgets to key essential budgets and realign to cater for emerging needs. We also need to adequately local governments to be supported in expanding the e-governance modalities, adequate physical space for local government to enable to implement emergency response and ensure continued delivery of basic services. We also need to work as a ministry on modalities of helping local government to embrace the new technologies that enable them to work from home. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has greatly impacted on many local government system processes. It has greatly impacted on budget implementation, as shown above. There is need to realign initial plans and focus on key critical priorities. Local government should strengthen the capacity of the existing local government structures, both technical and political, to ensure the utilization of the available resources and provide service delivery to their citizens. What we should not miss out, we need to work on the IT and automate most of the manual processes that are being implemented. I beg to submit and want to thank you and request for questions, comments at a particular time that it comes. Thank you so much. Hello?
Thank you, CPA Guard. And once again, wherever we are, let's put our hands together for CPA Guard for the wonderful insights that he has shared with us this morning. Some few key things that we note from the two presentations by Gad and Ambrose. There's a lot of disruption that has come with COVID-19. And the key thing is we need to change, to have a mindset change. We need to find ways of how we can support our local government structures. We need to find strategies around promotion of agribusiness and how do we realign our resource corrections to the relevant allocations. Now, we've got a number of questions that have come through. Members, feel free also to give suggestions because as a professional accountants, we should not let the government suffer alone in the process of ensuring public financial management. Any contributions over and above the questions that you are putting forward will come in handy to recommend ways of how we can improve or set ourselves in a recovery mode in preparation to thrive. I have seen some of the questions that have been raised. Ambrose has been able to put answers to some of the questions raised. So I will pick up a few questions. And one from Sendagire Wycliffe. This is an interesting question. Why is it, I don't know who's going to take this, maybe Ambrose, you can attempt and God can give you support. Why is it that government up to now has failed to understand the role being played by certified accountants? We've been referred to as non-essential when everyone was talking about essential resources. And in a way, this has manifested its way in the wages and the way accountants are graded. Just a few words, share with us what your thoughts are on that, Ambrose and
Gad. Thank you, Norbert. I think Gad had could have, he will add there on a stronger point. But the reason we actually instituted the Accountants Act was strengthen the position of an accountant in government. And with the increasing reforms, the head of accounts, for example, in a government department now is required to be a member of CPA. Now, the next thing we are moving for is to ask URA not to accept returns from any companies that have not used a certified accountant by ICPAU. Of course, you know that URA is still undergoing restructuring, excuse me, and they will be able to embark on this. And of course, we are looking at once that is done and all companies, private sector are forced to use the qualified accountants. And of course, in government, we are also doing a lot of training for accountants. Private sector is also engaged together with Auditor General uses private sector to audit. And then hopefully very soon they will increase their remuneration and standing to ensure that they are able to respond to the very many needs. And then their standing, of course, in society will be recognized. But it is a process that is ongoing. So maybe God can add on that one in terms of that.
Thank you, Ambrose. As you have put it, there are some initiatives which are being undertaken. And you also remember that public service is doing a clear restructuring, which is in place. But what is coming out, of course, is the resources. But local governments, heads of finance, have been upgraded. You cannot be a head of finance when you are not a CPA, meaning that you must have a status of a head of department at a level of assistant commissioner in the ministry, in the ministries. Heads of internal audit equally are also being considered. We have got some initiatives which are being undertaken. Minister of Finance is aware, under RIP, Resource Enhancement Accountability Program, which is enhancing the capacity of the account staff. And one of the critical areas that is looking at is at CPA. Who is a CPA? You also remember under FINMA, most of accountants and internal auditors were trained. And this training itself is a motivation. As much as a wage, a salary is critical, but enhancement the capacity of a person is also very important. Once trained, you can join other areas. But what I can put it clearly is that Minister of Public Service is working on that, and the Accountant General is in support, and we feel at one time we shall be able to measure with other line officers. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have another question from, and in no particular order, from CPA Godfrey Kakara. To what extent has COVID-19 presented opportunities for fraudsters to circumvent controls and engage in person enrichment? I think something around cyber security in government. Any comments from the two of you?
Thank you, Norbert, and a good question from Kakara. I think we have not registered any significant cases in as far as the financial management systems are concerned regarding cyber security. Expenditures which have been paid during this period will be audited by Auditor General, so we'll be able to have a better report from the Auditor General once the audit has taken place. But we are very alert, and I think if you are very alert as as I presented, expenditures were limited to our system. During that time, we stopped certain expenditures. Secondly, the system was not always available. It would be switched on only at certain times to avoid people idling in the system, because there is, of course, curfew still ongoing. So there would not be very many avenues in terms of cyber security for fraud to come in. Even though we tried to facilitate timely payments by reducing the certain periods for clearing, we are very alert on the payments which were going through the system at that time. So we didn't have many. But if there are any expenditures which are being done by votes at that level, circumvent controls, maybe it could be manual in the execution of activities, those would be properly dealt with by the Auditor General during the audit process. That is all I think I can comment on that.
Thank you, CP Ambrose. I'll go to the next one. And I think this is specifically to you, Ambrose, CP Ambrose. The Office of Accountant General had a backlog for, I think Auditor General had a backlog of FY audits in lower local government. And it seems we had come up to speed. With the COVID pandemic, how best is the Office of Auditor General preparing to ensure that the audits of the lower local governments are not don't experience a backlog once again? Maybe you can look at it from where you sit, but also CPA Guard, you can share with us some of the things that you are doing at local government to make sure that we don't have any backlog at lower local government.
Thank you, Norbert. I think because the Auditor General's office would be in the right position to comprehensively answer the question. Sure. But obviously there will be backlog if it is in that sense. And I was not privy to the progress that had been made by the question that put forward. Maybe GAD could have additional information because they coordinate a lot with the Auditor General in terms of sub-county audits. GAD?
Hello?
We lost. Okay, go ahead, GAD.
Thank you so much. I sit on the committee for accountabilities under RIP, and the timelines have not changed so far as receiving reports and also the reporting timelines. If it is a 9-month, every week, Minister of Finance indicates those who have not submitted, we receive these reports and we keep in contact with our accounting officers. So the timelines have not changed, but equally, Office of the Auditor General, we are in touch, and in RIP, we have been receiving. Right now, yesterday, we have the same meeting and shared these reports. So we still encourage our accounting officers to report in time. But also, what is important is that, as Ambrose has clearly put it, there are so many restrictions. As much as COVID is there, they have not changed the procedures. If it is adjustment of the budget, then it must pass through the normal procedures, and it has not changed. In that process, we are able to track down, except the oversight, like local government public accounts committee are not sitting, but we hope a method will be used to have these committees sit. So briefly, that is how I could respond to that aspect.
Yeah, thank you, CP Ambrose and CPA Guard. And I think CPA Guard, you've answered a question from Karakayo John. He was asking about whether there's going to be some relaxation around reporting timelines as far as the final accounts are concerned. And I think you've mentioned that the timelines are not changing. So John Karakayo, if you are part of the government finance team, please make sure you stick to the timelines. There is a question from Shira Kasuja. As one of the PFM system challenges, internet has been unreliable. Government has a CBON, I don't know what that means, structure in place to ensure reliable internet. What's your comment on this? Maybe we can, let's hear from CPA Guard, because I think largely this affects mostly the lower local government, all the local, rather the various districts around the country.
So much, Norbert. It is very true that we have been having PFM systems challenge, especially in remote local governments. But what has been done is that the Ministry of Finance, specifically Treasury, has implemented regional centers where a support are always given. For example, in the Western, if you have a challenge, you go to Mbarara. And Ministry of Finance has been able to support these regional centers to curb this. But equally, we are in touch. We keep on interacting, and in case of any issue, we report effectively to the Ministry of Finance for to resolve those specific issues. Thank you.
Thank you, CPA Gad. Rogers Mtuheire has got a question around CFOs who had no CPA were given timelines to attain certification with COVID effects. That, rather with the COVID effects that have led to cancellation of CPA exams, will those timelines be revised? I don't know who can take that one up. Ambrose, any comments on that?
Thank you, Norbert. There is, of course, we are still within the COVID issues. You know, even ICPA is still sitting to agree on some things to do with voting. So I think a decision is not yet made on that, but you can be sure that they will have to be a meeting and then they agree on how to assist those who are in the final stages of completion. Because how many sittings were they given? If it is only 1 year, maybe an extension could be given for 1 year, depending on the circumstances that will be presented and how many had met that timeline given. Because you know there are so many excuses that will come out of this COVID, and others will hide under the umbrella to continue extending certain deadlines. But they will definitely consider and review it. That is all I can say for now.
Okay, thank you so much. CPA got a question for you from Fred Ahindisiwe. He would like you to shed more light on what you mean by the planned procurements that were not carried out, how they would attract litigation to local governments. And I think probably he's looking at it from the angle that in your contracts, don't you have the force majeure clauses that probably you can apply? So over to you, CPA Gad.
Thank you so much. What I meant here specifically is that there were contracts already signed. The adjustments are allowable in a procurement process, but there are also those which had reached a time of payment and they had not been paid. We are looking at revenue to support these payments. Loss of revenue, it means that you are not going to recover that revenue. In effect, it has affected the revenue of the payments for these procurements. And once these are late, you can't realize the revenue. So we go for litigations. So local governments may not be able to clear all the procurements which had earlier been anticipated on a source of revenue that is not forthcoming right now. That's what I meant on the litigation of the planned procurements.
All right. Thank you so much. Before you go, Gad, there is another question for you here from your OB, who thanks you for the presentation. He says that he worked for district local government for 5 years, and what he experienced was the weaknesses around implementation of decentralized services. So the local governments are largely depending on central government transfers. What strategies do you suggest, or what is your thoughts on dealing with the dilemma between local government financial commitments and central government policy pronouncements that at times affect the local government plans.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very good one. And this issue has always been raised. A contribution of local revenue to the national cake is 3% for rural and 6% for urban areas, municipalities and town councils, meaning that local government's contribution on the national cake is still very small. But we should also realize that the local revenues that contribute all the national, the revenues themselves that are collected by URA, local governments contribute. If I buy salt, there is a tax. If I buy water, there is a tax. So initially, local governments at the community level contribute to the national cake. But in the event that it is very small, the 3%, it can be enhanced. We are instituting revenue enhancement plans, mentoring, looking at and increasing the revenue base for local governments. Those are the initiatives that we are looking. When we go to agro-led activities, value added. So we think and we hope that by increasing those revenues, we shall be able to enhance the revenue for local government. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. And I will follow it up again. There is an interesting question here from Jamil Kasirivu that while the central government is thinking of a stimulus package for various businesses and business owners, what are local governments thinking of in terms of stimulating the businesses that operate within their jurisdictions, as these businesses contribute a lot of taxes and also have been disrupted by COVID-19?
Thank you so much, Norbert. That is a very good question. In my presentation, I was requesting that SACCOs, even the presentation of the national budget speech, it was clear indicating that the initiation, the ministries or the government of Uganda is looking at supporting SACCOs, cooperatives, so that they can generate more revenue. When you support SACCOs, one, you are increasing the livelihood, income of the community, of the citizens at the lower base. But secondly, you are inculcating the investments or the saving aspect of local communities, and also looking at reducing the expenditure part. So by saving, by sharing, it increases the livelihood and also the reducing the expenditure part of these communities. That's how I would look at it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Now there's another question here meant for CPA Ambrose. Alex Muimba and someone else, I think, I'd also ask the same question, but they are saying that can you shed more light on filing of URA returns by CPA? Thank you. But I think this is something to do with where you mentioned that URA needs to emphasize that no one should file returns unless they are CPAs.
Thank you, Norbert. I think, yes, the return is what we are emphasizing now. Unfortunately, it has been happening among us, even as government agencies. So what we are moving to is ensuring that only qualified accountants certify accounts, submit returns, and then we are able to remove the revenue leakages. Because if you go to a company which does, you know, there are so many companies in terms of bidding, like doing business with government, they go and use any person and then go to a qualified, even a qualified company, to certify fake accounts and use them to get income tax clearance and other requirements that the companies might be looking for. So that's what we are looking at. With the Accountants Act, we hope if such a person does it, then we can punish the audit firm. And once we get rid of that, then we'll have clean records in URA. So that's the exact meaning that we want. For now, to do with the COVID, those ones were very clear. I think it is different from that. That they pay and maybe submit returns later, and maybe the interest, the penalty and the interest will be waived.
Thank you, CPA Ambrose. CPA Guard, there's a question for you from CPA Martin Omoni, and I think it's basing on your presentation around human capital disruptions. And he's saying there are some CFOs who have been acting for over 10 years now. District service commissions normally said they fail to get the right candidates due to experience issues. Can you shed more light or give comments around that, given that, you know, already you have like some forced freeze on recruitment?
Yeah, thank you, Norbert, and thank you for raising this issue. Public service requires that an officer should not exceed 6 months in the acting capacity. That is a requirement. But also under the local government finance structure, you have a senior accountant at U3, you have a senior finance officer at U3. A head of finance at a district level is U1, indicating that you cannot move from U3 as a senior, you go to U, because you must go systematically according to the procedures of recruitment and also of service, public service. So what we've been encouraging staff and local governments is to ensure that they can customize and create a principal level in finance as a principal accountant, indicating that you are able to climb ladders systematically. But also we are advised by public service that you can apply if you have the requirements through normal procedures, and you have an accelerated promotion from U3 up to U1, indicating that it should be an initiative of local governments, and that's what we have been putting to them. Right now, we've been receiving adverts for such a, but we have been advising local governments to advertise. But there are also cases where local governments keep jobs for their sons and daughters because is at that level, they are not willing to surrender and advertise in normal procedures. So we've been advising to that. But at the moment, for this period of time, heads of finance have moved from 45% to 54% as per end of December. Last week, I was in Buweju where I interviewed, and we had 2 aspirants. In also around September, there was an advert in a district. There were 3. Wampara has now. Also around December, we were able to attract, but we encourage those who have the requirements to apply and get these aspects. But as you have put it, it is still a challenge which we are grappling with, and we are in touch with the Accountant General on how best we can sort out these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, CPA Gad. We have a question from Thomas Ediangu, and I think this is specific to CPA Ambrose. The request is that clarify on the treatment of other government transfers budgeted by ministries, but transferred to local governments. I don't know what that means. How should local governments report on these to avoid double reporting by both ministries? Maybe also you could shed more light on how you're accounting for the many donations that have been received both in cash and kind at a local government level.
Thank you, Norbert. We have provided guidance on that, on other government transfers from the ministries to the local governments, and created an item in the chart of accounts. And we have issued also a reporting template as well as the guidelines on how that funding should be treated. And of course, the long-term solution is to ensure that at appropriation level, the money is actually appropriated to the local government directly, not through another ministry. An attempt was made last year, but we had not yet finalized with Parliament. Hopefully in the near future, it will be sorted out, because the transfers are mainly from like road fund. They also have others under Ministry of Gender, and of course OPM, so we'll be able to have it directly voted to the ministry where they are. So double reporting has been guided in the guidelines we have issued, and there won't be any double reporting by the local governments. And of course, we are also planning on going physically to the local governments to train them on how they will be reporting in the financial statements.
Thank you, CPA Ambrose. There is another question here for you, and from Kiita Chambade, and from the ethical perspective, he's asking that yesterday Parliament passed supplementary budget of over $1 trillion. In the remaining days, is it proper, with the remaining days to the end of the financial year, is it proper, and why didn't the strong points that were in the minority report taken into consideration, given the timing, I think, at which the supplementary budget has been passed? So from finance, how are you going to handle this to ensure compliance?
Thank you, Norbert, and thank you for the question. The supplementary which was passed yesterday, maybe we need to understand the context in the PFM. We usually take supplementary schedules to Parliament, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, depending on the timing that supplementaries come in. When budget implementation has just started, the first quarter usually is discouraged, supplementary is discouraged. Now, when people come within the second quarter, the PFM allows the minister to issue supplementaries, get agencies to spend, and then present them to Parliament within 4 months after issuing it. Now, he does not issue and then immediately the following day go to Parliament, and they don't come in at the same time. Today may be Ministry of Education, Ministry of Works might bring the other week. So we wait for a period when they have reached a significant amount or ministries before going to present them to Parliament. So that schedule that was presented yesterday, part of it was already actually spent. Because the system, the IFMIS, we switched off yesterday evening. Nobody is spending from possibly today or tomorrow until the end of the financial year. We are doing now end of year clearance of transactions to ensure that those who have been paid, monies have reached, and any bounced EFTs. There is no more spending. So that one which was passed was not spending now. May have either been spent last time, and they are only doing the regionalization. Now, part of the money we asked for, which they are calling supplementary, is the 2 loans of IMF and World Bank, which we are going to use to finance the budget and activities for next financial year. So it's not that it is now, but they also had to be approved by Parliament. So there is nothing like games being played around it, no, because the system was stopped yesterday. Nobody can spend between now and Monday. So they should take comfort. But the law allows you to spend money as long as it is within the 3%, and then present Parliament within the 4 months of that expenditure. So we issue supplementaries depending on the intensity, either 2 times or 3 times a year, making sure that we are within the 4 months window and within 3%. So it may have been presented and approved yesterday, but the expenditure incurred some 1-2 months back.
Yeah, thank you, CP Ambrose. We still have about 28 minutes. And I think the questions we had, let me see if somebody else has posted anything, but okay, we have one from Adria Robert. You are requesting for how you are going to get these presentations. The Institute will be sharing them with you. There was also another question around whether people are going to be compensated for the costs they've incurred while they are working from home. Any comment on that, Ambrose?
It's a challenge, but for us usually, civil service, we use the law. You have to use the law. If you have to incur any expenditure, you must get authority. Now there are certain things. For example, if you went and did work, you travel like now without authority, you go somewhere and do work, then you come to claim an allowance, the accounting officer may refuse. It must be within the work plan, and it must be sanctioned. Now, if you are to lend the government money, you need the approval of Parliament. Parliament must give authority that Kagoro, you are going to lend money to government of Uganda, so you go to Kamuli and spend some 600,000, and it becomes a loan. Or then it is a grant. So either a loan or a grant or a donation. So if you are spending from home, you need facilitation. It has to be done in administratively, but it is not legal that you start. If they can be justified, then you can claim, but with proper justification. And get paid by your respective accounting officers. But you must justify, because there are so many, there's a lot of mystery surrounding the COVID expenditures from home.
Very true. There's a question, I think, from Amos Nyombi. What is being put in place to ensure verification is done without human interactions in regards to support documents? So maybe, are there any plans by government to have some artificial intelligence and stuff like that in the verification processes? Over to you, Ambrose.
Thank you. No, but we have asked for those ministries which submitted their reports online, for example, they will be required to send also the hard copies and go through our registry. Now, when it comes to Auditor General, I am aware they are having meetings to try and see the approach they will use in verifying and auditing for next financial year. So you can be sure they will come up with a strategy on how they will deal with that. But of course, for us, eventually, we are asking people to send the hard copies by either courier, have them delivered through our registry, and then we have them. Because there are also risks. Someone can sit anywhere and send an email. Now, the challenge is we have had most people are not using institutional emails. There are some districts which don't have official emails, in addition to having no internet. So you cannot say, subject to say that the cow of Sironko must use Sironko address. It is impossible. Most of them have been using Gmail, Yahoo. So we get them to submit yes online, but also send the hard copies, which will be used for purposes of future verification. And I'm sure Auditor General will also issue guidelines when the audit entry meetings start. They could do them maybe online and then give proper guidance on how their officers will conduct the audit and verification of the activities for this period.
Thank you so much, CPA Ambrose. And there is another question from Obed Chineba, and specifically to you. And the way he has written it, you can see a lot of passion in this question. CPA Ambrose, is it possible to practically do away with supplementary budgets? Over to you, CPA Ambrose.
Thank you. I think that question is for the Minister of Finance, because the one authorizes supplementary budgets. It is also our wish that we do away with it, but that depends on our capacity to collect revenues. There is still belief that we are losing lots of revenue in URA, and then it stifles the expenditure side. So hopefully we will. That is our wish, and it is also our dream to have a balanced budget. We should also reach a level where we can start donating to other countries without all the time borrowing. But for now, it is circumstantial that we are unable to handle all our expenditures within our budgets, budgeted resources. But hopefully that's where we are moving it to.
That's right. Thank you so much, CPA Ambrose.
In the formulating, that was our purpose.
Very true. Thank you all. Thank you, participants. We have about 20 minutes to the end of this session. There is a poll that has been posted, so please make sure you answer some of those questions to enable the Institute prepare well for future webinars. The question is really around the number of hours we can spend during these sessions. But keep the questions coming. But when I check on the question and answers platform, we've exhausted all the questions that we had for the day. At this juncture, I would like you to join me in thanking CPA GAT and CPA Ambrose for the wonderful presentations and the very good, insightful answers they've given us in as far as the questions that you put forward. Some of the questions I did not repeat have already been answered, so feel free to check the Q&A tab to make sure that the questions that have been answered, you don't miss out on those answers. May I call upon somebody from the Secretariat to take us through the final bits, and I know the Institute will not deduct the 20 minutes that are remaining from your 2-hour CPD. So over to you at the Secretariat. If no one is from the Secretariat, I can ask the CPA Constant Maende, who I know has been serving on the council, to make a few remarks.
Sorry, CPA Norbert Kagoro, I am not in a position to make that because I'm a candidate.
Oh, sorry.
So it will be misunderstood.
I had forgotten that.
Yeah, sorry.
Patrick,
yeah, anyone from the Secretariat?
Yes, I'm on, Norbert.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to thank you, Norbert, and the presenters for taking us through today's presentations. It has been a wonderful session. Our next webinar is on Tuesday. It is on money laundering. please make sure that you book. We may be alternating, holding the seminars in the morning and afternoons, because the responses indicate that some want, there is a strong balance between morning and afternoon. So we shall be alternating mornings and afternoons. Otherwise, participants, thank you very much for participating and wish you a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. And I wish you a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.